Before we get started today, I wanted to say a very special thank you to my latest patrons, who I lovingly call Friends with Benefits. And I just wanted to thank them so much for supporting Best Forevers. So a major shout out to Melanie from Girlfriends Happy Hour. Thank you for becoming a Friends with Benefit. And Kelly from Boobies and Newbies. Thank you for becoming a Friend with Benefits. Thank you so much to both of you for joining the movement to love on our friends more. Ferguson is glad to have y'all as new interns, and I appreciate the help and encouragement. And folks, you'll definitely want to check out their podcast too. Lots of fun with both. You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and folks, I am a self-diagnosed TV junkie, podcast follower, movie enthusiast, music addict, book fan, and sports supporter. I love them all. I love the stories I read, listen to, watch, and dance to. Let's be honest, the media can bring us a lot of joy, and especially with social media and being able to follow actors, vloggers, podcasters, authors, and more, we can all feel a little bit closer to our favorites. But are Glenn from The Walking Dead, Karen Kilgara from the My Favorite Murder podcast, actor Leonardo DiCaprio, Lady Gaga, author Judy Blume, and soccer player Wayne Rooney my friends? I'm sure you're thinking, Alysa, you in danger, girl. There's no way any of those people are your friends. And there's no way a friendship can occur, right? I mean, Glenn is a fictional character, so how can you be friends with him? Well, friends, stick with me. Open mind, open heart, or as Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights says, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. Today, I'd like to talk about parasocial relationships and how we all experience these types of friendships. I've got examples, personal experience, research, and some advice, so let's get started. I want to first be clear that although social media can bring us closer to celebrities, the idea of parasocial relationships has existed for some time. In 1956, Horton and Wall first conceptualized parasocial relationships, and many researchers, including myself, have continued to study these one-sided friendships among media characters or personalities and the audience. And the next little bit, I'm going to quote from an article in my show notes, which comes from the 1956 article that I do have because I use it quite a bit. And it says, quote, "They know such a persona in somewhat the same way they know their chosen friends. Through direct observation and interpretation of his appearance, his gestures and voice, his conversation and conduct in a variety of situations. Indeed, those who make up his audience are invited by design and formality to make precisely these evaluations, to consider that they are involved in a face-to-face exchange rather than in passive observation. When the television camera pans down on a performer, the illusion is strong that he is enhancing the presumed intimacy by literally coming closer. But the persona's image, while partial, contrived, and penetrated by illusion, is no fantasy or dream. His performance is an objectively perceptible action in which the viewer is implicated imaginatively, but which he does not imagine," end quote. For example, I grew up in a house where the national news was on every night at 6:30 p.m., and for most of my childhood, I can say that Dan Rather, as the CBS nightly news anchor, was on the screen. In fact, I can't think of anyone else that I saw on that television when I did live in the house. We didn't and don't know Dan Rather personally, but it's safe to say that we all come to trust certain news anchors, or that we become comfortable with hearing people's voices, the information that they present, their opinions, whatever the case might be. Hearing and seeing Dan Rather every night is a memorable part of my childhood, and this behavior continued as I was an adult, as I watched Jon Stewart on The Daily Show Monday through Thursday night, and now Trevor Noah. I would even catch myself saying things like, "I gotta go, John's on." Like we're on a first-name basis. These relationships were first studied with newscasters and anchors like Dan Rather, and also those on soap operas. And let's say I grew up in an All My Children house, okay? You can at me, you can fight me, you can let me know, no, it's Young and the Restless, no, it's Days of Our Life. No. In the Lucas house, it was All My Children, where Susan Lucci is queen, and I learned a lot about Kelly Ripa as a young actress. And I can't imagine watching any other show, or that there were so many years that Susan Lucci did not win Best Actress. I mean, what, such a travesty. Now, we can apply parasocial relationships to soap operas and news anchors, but there's so much more today. Musicians, YouTubers, actors, actresses, fictional characters, gamers, athletes, and just so much more. I don't necessarily think that parasocial relationships are something that we get out of our childhood, but Dan Rather and Susan Lucci were two people I fondly think of because of how much time they were welcomed into our home. In 2016, Lauren Young wrote the article, How Our Make-Believe Relationships with Celebrities Shape Our Social Lives. She states, quote, parasocial relationships are strong emotional bonds with people you've never met and who do not relate back to you, or can't if they are fictional characters. These relationships grow as you seek out more information about the person, reading magazine articles, watching interviews on YouTube, and discovering their intimate likes and dislikes on Instagram and Twitter, end quote. She talks about if we had ever thought about wanting to be friends with Jennifer Lawrence, crushing on Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, and wanting to be a part of the Harry Potter world, then we've all had this experience. We've all had parasocial relationships. And let's be real, I can relate. Listen, I name my cats after soccer players and soccer people. I call Wednesday Survivor nights jokingly as date night with Jeff Probst. I wear shirts from my favorite podcasts, and I follow so many of my favorites on social media. So it's safe to say that these are things that we experience throughout our lives, and that it's not something strange that I'm sure many of you do some of the same things that I just discussed. So one way to think about it is this. We have our friends, we have our family, and we have our partners. But how would you feel if your favorite character died on a show you've been watching for years? Or even recently, how have you felt when you learned a celebrity had passed? Prince, Anthony Bourdain, and even this week, Penny Marshall. When I was 15 years old, River Phoenix died of an overdose outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles, California, and I was devastated. I had watched all his movies, and he was one of my first crushes, and I was moved to tears when I heard that he passed. Even more, when I talk about him now, some 25 years later, I'm still tremendously sad that we lost him. But if you do not experience these relationships, that's okay. The original article by Horton and Wall talks about the audience's ability to withdraw at any time. But Rubin and Rubin from 1985 would suggest that we may functionally fill a void with real-life relationships for some. So it's the idea that if we do have trouble making friends or we're away from friends, that these parasocial relationships might fill that void. For example, if someone is away at school, they may binge a TV show like The Office, and those characters may provide some sort of comfort while they build their own relationships, or as a way just to cope with everyday life. A March 2017 article entitled Parasocial Relationships, The Nature of Celebrity Fascinations on the webpage Find a Psychologist talks about how parasocial relationships may help us. Quote, parasocial relationships expand the social network in a way that negates the chance of rejection and empowers individuals to model and identify with individuals of their choosing who naturally elicit an empathic response. For some, the one-sided nature of the relationship is a relief from strained complementary relationships, end quote. If we take a look back at episode 57, just 2 episodes ago, I focused on friend zoning, unrequited love, and rejection. I even joked, well, having a crush on David Beckham, I can't be rejected if he doesn't know who I am. And so that's kind of where parasocial relationships come in, right? That we can choose these relationships and we can choose not to have a parasocial relationship. A lot of time it deals with attraction, but also it's this idea that it does keep us away from rejection. Also, in an August 2016 article, TV characters might be fictional, but your relationships with them isn't, makes this point. There is a, quote, social surrogacy hypothesis, which suggests that parasocial relationships can actually substitute for real ones in important ways. In that article, they talk about a 2008 study in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, which found that people tend to watch their favorite TV shows when they're lonely, and that those shows actually help them feel less lonely. It also found that even simply thinking about a favorite show can keep people from having low self-esteem and experiencing bad moods or feelings of rejection, end quote. I think that's fascinating that even thinking about The Office or thinking about Parks and Rec or whatever your favorite show is can make you feel a little less alone because these are people, whether they're TV characters or actors, musicians, podcasters, we might let them into our life every single day. And so, of course, we become more comfortable and become, quote unquote, close to them. And more recently, Bradley Bond published an academic article in the journal Media Psychology. His research indicated that parasocial relationships may help those who do have difficulty making social bonds. In his study, he found that lesbian, bisexual, and gay adolescents were more likely to report having connections with other lesbian, bisexual, and gay media personalities, especially if there was a lack of those peer relationships in their lives. And that those folks who participated in the study noted that the media personalities were, quote, important sources of information on a range of issues related to socialization, end quote. So I think it's important to consider how parasocial relationships can help us. If we're away from our primary relationships, if we're having difficulty making social bonds, or if we feel in the minority or alone in some way, whether it be on a college campus, in high school, in the workplace, whatever the case might be, that we might turn to media and to those characters and those friends or those personalities where we can get information that helps us or makes us feel more included. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having parasocial relationships, and the research I just mentioned would suggest, like much other parasocial research, that these relationships are helpful. In the article, Your Parasocial Obsession with the Royals is Perfectly Normal by Tanya Basu, parasocial relationships are compared to much like imaginary friends as children, where a fantasy world extends past the real world, but that much like for children, these friendships can help us in a number of ways. And what I liked best about the article was her interview with psychologist Susan Boone about fan-celebrity relationships. Boone makes it clear parasocial relationships shouldn't be looked as weird or an indicator that a person has a twisted relationship with technology. In fact, she pointed to our childhoods for a similar sort of parasocial relationship that we have that's one-sided and intense, imaginary friends. These friendships are natural and what Boone says that every human being is looking for, connection. So I think on the front of it, at the face of it, when people first hear of it, parasocial relationships sound kind of strange. And I think they are something that we all participate into to some degree. Maybe not everyone, but I think most people do experiencing these relationships because it's another way to make connections with other people or stories of people. I mean, fictional characters might not be real people, but you imagine those people in your head when you're reading, when those characters come to life on the TV or movie screen, that these are people that we can relate to or characters that we can relate to. But it doesn't mean it takes over our primary relationships. Cohen in 2003 talks about how parasocial relationships complement our social relationships. They may be less salient or intense as those social relationships, but they are still important in our lives. For example, how many times have you gone over to people's houses or had friends over to watch TV shows together, season premieres, season finales, and I'm guilty of that. I watched most of Lost and Grey's Anatomy with my friends in graduate school. Now, how many times have you gone to see every single movie of a series on opening night? Harry Potter, guilty. How many times have you seen your favorite podcast live? Several times. That might be me. When you listen and watch people consistently in your life, they're a part of your life. In fact, in some ways, they can be there more often than other people in your life. So I listen to podcasts every day. And so I might hear the voices of my favorite podcasters more than I hear my brother's voices. But does that mean my relationship with the podcaster is more important than my relationship with my brothers? No. Does it mean that the podcasters don't matter at all? No, I listen to them every day and I listen to them for a reason. In fact, in some ways, they can be there more than other people in your life. The Nature of Celebrity Fascinations article also talks about how parasocial relationships are very similar to our interpersonal relationships, including that these friendships are, quote, voluntary, provide companionship, and are based on social attraction, end quote. It doesn't necessarily mean physical attraction like, oh, I think they're attractive people, they're good looking, but it's people you would want to be around in your real life. They're funny, there's some sort of attraction there. Maybe they're smart, maybe they have certain experiences, maybe they have certain knowledge, much like the Bradley Bond article about lesbian, bisexual, and gay adolescents and parasocial relationships. And research has looked at relationship development, maintenance, and dissolution among the audience and the characters. For example, researchers have explored developing these relationships related to attraction, expected negative feelings if a show ends or a character dies. Oh my God. Violations of expectations, like if an actor or an athlete were to participate in bad behavior, investment, and so much more. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about a study that I conducted on parasocial relationships and one of my favorite TV shows, The Walking Dead. And I'll go more into detail into that research in a brief video on my Patreon account. So if you are a friend with benefit, you can check that out once this episode is released. But what I wanted to do is this. Okay, so The Walking Dead, if you're not familiar, is about the zombie apocalypse. And friends, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to forward it ahead a good minute because I don't want to spoil anything. And I have to spoil a little something to tell you what study I did. So 3, 2, 1. Glenn dies, guys. And I'm still pissed off about it. Okay, so let me tell you about the show. The show is basically about people trying to survive. And much like I say about all shows, whether they're about zombies or living in an apartment or whatever the case is, it's always about relationships. And it's always about creating, maintaining, and losing those relationships. That is pretty much life. If you look at all entertainment, there's some level of that in there. And you can argue with me or agree with me on that on social media. Come find me at Best Forever's Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I also appreciate emails at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. Okay, skippers, you might have to skip a little bit more because I haven't said everything yet. Okay, so on this show, there is a character that the audience loves, and his name is Glenn, and he's an important part in this TV show and an important part in the graphic novel if you read it. Now, the graphic novel and the TV show don't always line up, but in the graphic novel, again, spoiler alert, you know that Glenn is going to die. And so you might theorize that Glenn might also die on the TV show. And so when they announce that a particular character has been cast and will soon be seen on the show named Negan, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's also on Supernatural, then you know that perhaps his death might be coming, especially if the showrunners have decided to follow the graphic novel. And so what I did was this. I wanted to know, and first off, can I just say how pissed I was when they did like his fake death, where I thought he was dead, it looked like he was dead, and I was so shocked that I literally sobbed for 10 minutes. And maybe I was just super connected to Glenn, and I had a parasocial relationship, just related to him, thought he was a good guy, seemed like a good character. I've been watching him for seasons. I've been reading the graphic novel. But let's be real, I could have been going through something. But I sobbed for 10 minutes and then come to find out like 2 or 3 episodes later, nope, he's still alive. Like, thanks a lot for that fake out. So what I wanted to do is this. At the end of the season, Negan shows up and he's got his baseball bat, Lucille, which has barbed wire wrapped around it. And he has all of the main characters essentially lined up in front of him on their knees. And so what we see at the end of this episode is that Negan does hit someone with his bat, but we don't know who. And so I thought that gave me a particular interesting moment in which to study. So I asked people to fill out a survey, who they thought was going to die, their feelings about what would happen if that person died, would they continue watching this show, so on and so forth. I asked them about how they were bonded to the characters, etc. And I had them take that survey before the season premiere when we would find out who died. And then after they watched the season premiere, they then filled out another survey asking about the specific character, spoiler alert, who died, because it wasn't just Glenn. And so what I was looking at was what you expected, right? You think that this certain person is going to die, then they kill people, then how do you feel? Are you still connected to the characters? Are you still connected to the show? How do you feel? Will you continue to watch? And like I said, tell you more about the study in a Patreon video. But that's the idea, is that we're so connected to characters that we're devastated when they get killed off. Don't even bring up Grey's Anatomy. I'm still mad at them for a number of reasons. And The Wire, oh my God. See, that's the thing, is that especially when you watch a lot of television like I do, there can be a lot of connections. So, there can be some sadness when a TV binge is over. And there's some excitement when a new one starts and you relate to new characters, right? And so we all have, I think, this experience. It might not happen all the time. It might not happen as frequently as it does with me. But I do think that we do have fondness and affinity to certain media characters, to certain media personalities, and to some celebrities or athletes. So I asked some of my students to share their experience of parasocial relationships with me. So now I'd like to share some of those with you. But please know I've changed their names to the name of the characters from The Good Wife, because that is a TV show I'm currently binge watching. What's really cool here is the different types of media personalities that they consider to have parasocial relationships. So let's check them out. Okay, the first one is from Will. Again, name change. He says, I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast literally all day long. From the moment I get up to the background noise I fall asleep to, Joe Rogan is always in my ear. Rogan has become known from being host of the show Fear Factor, which I love. That's my commentary, and also being a big supporter and announcer for the UFC. He also had a podcast which has gained popularity in the past couple years. He talks about everything from sports to how Earth was created and takes a very interesting and unique view on just about everything. Most of what he says is extremely intriguing. He also brings lots of very interesting characters on, from Neil deGrasse Tyson to Elon Musk, and the show is always interesting. There are several reasons that I believe I've connected with Joe Rogan. First, Joe and the guests on the show speak very similar to me and my friends. They talk in depth about several topics and has a very laid-back tone of voice, and they don't hold back on swearing. This makes me feel comfortable with him and allows me to understand his arguments better. For example, when speaking on black holes, he doesn't use a bunch of science jargon, but explains things in an easy-to-understand way. These speech styles brought me closer to him. As a communication person, that's also interesting to me too. Like how similar our speech styles, or from listening, say, to podcasters like Joe Rogan, do our speech styles become more similar to them? Ooh, interesting. Okay, back to the letter. Next, Joe also has very similar viewpoints because we approach things in a logical way. He tackles problems pragmatically and makes sure that he uses facts and not raw emotion. Joe's speech style, viewpoints, and approach to topics are major reasons why we've connected. He is the man, plain and simple. There are also many benefits to our relationship, but mostly for me. First, because Joe has so much content, I'm always able to listen whenever I want. Good point. Good point, Will. I can seriously go on YouTube or the Apple Podcast app and find him talking about any topic that I choose. Therefore, I'm always learning about what I want. I don't need to sit through an entire 4-hour podcast waiting to hear one thing, because now I can sift through the clips he's made and choose to listen to exactly what I want. This benefits me greatly because of my busy schedule. Next, by being a fan of Joe and having such a deep parasocial relationship has brought me together with other fans and allowed me to bond over Joe and his podcasts. It's kind of like having a mutual friend that doesn't know either of you. That's a really interesting point, too, from Will. This idea that when you like a vlogger, an actor, a musician, a podcaster, whoever, that there are other fans out there and that you immediately have something in common with them. And so you can create real life relationships based on your parasocial relationships. And so that's really interesting. Okay, this has brought me closer to people I have real relationships with. Lastly, Joe is someone that I can listen to when I feel lonely or just bored. I don't have to respond to him, and I can pause him whenever I want, which really goes into what Horton and Wall have said. This may sound concerning, but it's nice to have control over what you hear and when you hear it. I listen to him before bed every night, which is weirdly calming for me. Joe's a friend that's there when I need him, and he never bothers me when I don't want to listen. Well, thanks, Will. So that was a podcaster. So next up, Zach is going to talk about an athlete. Throughout my life, I've experienced quite a few parasocial relationships. For me, I usually acquire a parasocial relationship with someone that I look up to and strive to be like. See, that can go into, folks, that social attraction. I also acquire these relationships with people I feel as I have things in common with. Someone that I've developed quite a strong parasocial relationship with is the greatest basketball player ever to grace the court, LeBron James. All right, side note. Okay, LeBron James or I almost said Michael Jackson. Beat it. Okay, anyway, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Discuss. Okay, back to Zach and his discussion of LeBron James. I first built a parasocial relationship with LeBron James during his rookie year with the Cavaliers. Oh, that's a long time, and that's some dedication, I'll tell you that. To this day, I still remember my first time watching him play. I was watching basketball with my dad, and we were both amazed at how athletic and dominant this 18-year-old teenager was while playing amongst the best competition the basketball world had to offer. Because the one-and-done rule was not in effect during this time, LeBron was able to jump straight from high school to the professional ranks. I believe that I connected with LeBron right from the beginning of his career because he showed me that with hard work and determination, anything is possible. Like he has stated in his most recent campaign with Nike, it is only a crazy dream until you do it, so just do it. I am by no means a professional caliber athlete. I love the honesty. But I believe that statement is something that has benefited me exponentially when related to things such as my academic career. Having this parasocial relationship with LeBron has benefited me in many positive ways, and I'm very thankful for that. Having this experience has had some problematic moments regarding to his 3-6 record in the NBA Finals. Side note, as a Golden State Warrior fan, Sorry. Anywho, he has faced a lot of scrutiny because of this, and when I heard that scrutiny, I take to heart because of how close of a connection I feel with him. I get that with fans. When you have that parasocial relationship, you want to defend your friend, right? So back to the letter. But the positives outweigh the negatives when it comes to this relationship. The amount of joy that I felt when LeBron brought a championship home to Cleveland was unparalleled to anything I've ever experienced while watching sports. I believe it is that type of connection and joy that builds strong parasocial relationships. As stated earlier, this relationship has had some difficult times, but I will forever be a LeBron fan and a strong supporter that he is the greatest basketball player ever to grace the court. Not only is he a once-in-a-generation talent, he does anything he can do to give back to the community that built him into the prominent figure that he is today. Because of that, I am forever inspired and strive to be as amazing of a person as the king is. Okay, even though LeBron's good, can you tell that I have a parasocial relationship with some other basketball players? I do, but I really appreciate this idea of striving and thriving, much like these other people, that we can look up to the people that we have parasocial relationships with, and that might be why we're attracted to them. Again, it doesn't have to do anything with physical or sexual attraction. It's just we flock to that person because of something, and it can mean anything to you, and it's fine, whatever that is. Now, this one, when I saw what it was about, I got really excited. So this is Alysa. Again, don't forget names have been changed to characters from The Good Wife. My most recent parasocial relationship has been with the music group BTS. Oh, I'm super excited. BTS is a Korean pop group made up of 7 guys. The parasocial relationship started in July of this year, and it was honestly by coincidence. Facebook has a feature that will recommend videos for you on your timeline based on the music videos you watch on YouTube. I swear, they know everything we're doing. Alysa says, I've been listening to a song by the rapper Eyal, who I would find out later did a song with one of the members from BTS. This is the reason why it showed up on my timeline. I had heard of them before, and I knew that they'd gotten very popular, so I decided to give the song a try. And I ended up liking it, which led me to going to YouTube and falling down the rabbit hole, as I like to describe it. We've all been there, Alysa. I think there are several reasons why I connected to them. First off, I love music, and I have a big appreciation for singers who can not only sing, but also have great performance skills. When I watched the first video of one of their songs, their vocal skills were amazing. The choreography was also interesting to watch, and it amazed me that they were singing live while doing the choreography full out. Once I started listening to their music, I had to watch lyrics translation videos because they sing in Korean. The deeper meaning behind their lyrics and how they put certain phrases together surprised me because I didn't think that the music would be that good to begin with. Oh, okay. However, I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that you can tell that they are very genuine people. I think in this generation, it's harder to find artists of substance who make music because that's what they love to do and not because they are chasing fame or money. I'm going to give snaps to that. Good point. They make music because they all have passion for it. They perform because they have a passion for it, and their passion clearly shows through them. There have been many benefits from my parasocial relationship with them. For one, listening to their music has exposed me to the world of K-pop. There are so many other amazing K-pop artists that don't get their deserved recognition because they're from Korea and sing in Korean. Secondly, they discuss a lot of issues that young adults go through in their songs, including depression, the pressure to go to college and become what other people want you to be, and self-esteem issues. Listening to their music and reading the lyrics makes me feel as they understand exactly what I and other countless people have gone through, which in turn makes them relatable. Thank you, Alysa. I like what Alysa has to say here because I think that's critical to parasocial relationships, right? This idea of being able to relate to them, and we choose who we respond to and what we care about, and that we find the people who make us feel like they understand us, right? And so for her, they understand what she's going through. All right, next up we have Grace, and she talks about how she was attached to Grey's Anatomy, which is created by Shonda Rhimes. And listen, I think we've all been there. She says, I started the show late. I was never interested in it, even though my whole family watched it, and I used to always think they were weird for watching doctor shows. Fair enough. My parents still watch Perry Mason. I think that's their parasocial relationship. Perry Mason, maybe some Rachel Maddow. But yeah, so we all watch our things, right? So she says, but when I came across the show on Netflix, I decided to start watching it, and I was immediately engaged. Like, quote, yes, why did it take so long for me to watch this, end quote. If they're weird, I'm weird too. And I hear that. It was a lot. I was really shocked as how good the show was right off in the first couple of seasons. I feel like I had a relationship with all the characters, but if there was one person that I was more connected to, it would have to be, I think y'all know who it is, Meredith Grey. She is one of the main characters in the show and has played a huge role in what the show is based around. I also enjoy Sandra Oh's character, Christina, if I can give a little shout out there. She says, I was a normal watcher until I got so connected I turned into a binge watcher. Every time I would have any free time, Grey's Anatomy was on and I was watching. Whether it was up on my phone in the app or on my computer and at school or home, I think I gained a stronger relationship with Meredith for the main reason being that she was one of the main characters, meaning they focused the show around her problems more, her point of view, and how she was living her life. So as I would watch the show, I'd act like I'm Meredith. I think we can all relate to that in some ways. I started to understand and see how she would feel to different situations before they even showed a reaction. Having this particular relationship with Meredith had its up and downs because, girl, this show had me crying, all caps, real tears. And you know what, Grace? Same. I still have some issues that me and Shonda Rhimes needed to take up. But it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Grace says, since I had a connection with Meredith, I also felt a connection with all other characters, and I started to care about their feelings and reactions to situations as well, especially with their significant other, soon-to-be husband, Derek Shepherd, also known as McDreamy. I'm adding the tone and the McDreamy part. There was a point in time in the show that they were having relationship issues, and I felt like I was Meredith, just tired of Derek. Well, fair. I remember the most depressing episode when Derek, spoiler alert, it's been years, folks, get on board, when Derek died because he was taken to the wrong hospital. Ugh. The episode left me completely distraught, and I felt Meredith's pain so hard as a doctor, wife, and a mother, even though I'm absolutely none of the three. I love that. This is where I noticed I actually had a strong connection with this show. Stronger than I thought I once did before, because the way I cried, you would have thought that this was my husband, okay? I think a real strong benefit to having the relationship with Meredith was able to view the show in a different way. It brought me in more and helped me dig deeper into events and drama that was happening throughout each episode. I feel like having a connection with a character when you are watching a show is important, only because you're able to actually understand what you are watching better, you getting a feeling for the episodes and characters instead of just watching it just because. Thank you. I think, so far, this is the first one that focuses on a fictional character, and so I appreciate what Grace has said here, because I've also watched Grey's Anatomy. I was connected to Glenn on The Walking Dead. There's so many characters on The Wire and so many other shows that I relate to or I appreciate or I look up to. And I think that you do get to understand these relationships. And I think going beyond what Grace is saying here, it's not just understanding what's going on in the show. I think that being a part of that show can help you better understand what's going on in your life as well. So next up, we have Eli, and he said that he wanted to talk about a TV character. Eli says, the character that I held a parasocial relationship with was Damon Salvatore, and he is played by Ian Somerhalder. Ooh, fans get me if I said that wrong. In the TV show The Vampire Diaries. Although I like Damon the most, I almost equally like a few other characters in the show, and I love the show itself. I do not want to say that I've had a hard life, but in times that I've had it in the hardest, The Vampire Diaries has always been there to have my back. So I guess this parasocial relationship is just as much with Damon as it is with the whole show, Vampire Diaries. I was a diehard fan of the show from the beginning. I can tell you every character's name with who he or she dated, who they killed, and how many times they themselves were killed. Interesting. I consider myself as a walking encyclopedia for the Vampire Diaries and for my favorite character. When the show first came on, I was instantly connected to Damon. Although he was considered the bad guy at first, I thought he was cool and smart, not to mention not too bad on the eyes. The way he carried himself like he was the most badass guy on the planet was how I've always wanted to present myself. In junior high, I was one of the biggest kids at school and got bullied most days. I always kept my head up high because that was how Damon would have responded to the situation. In the show, he had to deal with loss, rejection, and hatred because of who he was. However, he never let that bother him because he knew that his head was always in the game, and when the others needed him, which was a lot, he was always there to help. I saw that in myself even after someone was rude to me or made fun of me. When push came to shove, I was always someone to lean on if it got too bad. Damon was always loyal to the people he cared for the most. He made a ton of mistakes and on many occasions played the bad guy role very well. This never stopped him from being the most loyal guy in the show, though. That being said, the biggest quality I pride myself on is my loyalty to my closest friends. My best friends in the world always know that I'm there for them when they need me the most. When Damon's friends were kidnapped, he was always there to save them. When my friend called me at 3 a.m. to pick them up because they had been drinking and couldn't drive, I was there in an instant. When Damon's brother needed to help him save his girlfriend, even after they've had a fight, he was there. When my brothers here on campus come to me for help on speeches, they know I'll help them even though they were rude and ignorant to me earlier in the day. Siblings. Now, that's not to say Damon and I haven't stood our ground. Many times in the show, he has had to stand up to the biggest bad there is out there. In my life, I can proudly say that I'm not a bystander. Like Damon, I too stand up to those that believe they have the right to do whatever they want. It's weird actually typing this out, but sometimes when I face a daunting challenge or a stupid bully, on occasion, I ask myself, what would Damon do? He radiated confidence, and I hold myself to that same standard. I've been asked by a couple of my not-so-close friends how I'm able to be as confident as I am. I'm not honest with them. I don't tell them it's because of Damon Salvatore, but I always enjoy a silent smile to myself about how weird they would think I am if I actually told them. There's 2 more situations I would like to speak on. My senior year of high school, my grandfather passed away. My family knew it was coming, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Yeah, it's never easy. The day that it happened is pretty clear in my head. The whole family had a dinner later that night, and then I got to go for a ride with my best friend to clear my head. However, I distinctively remember how it ended that night. I was downstairs in my family home, and I was getting lost in my own thoughts, and it was one of the saddest nights that I can remember having. I made the decision to turn on a movie. There wasn't anything I wanted to watch, so instead I plugged in my DVD set of The Vampire Diaries. The episode that I watched I had seen many times, but there was one line where Damon tells his brother that everything's going to be okay, and I'm not so irrational that I thought he was talking to me, but I remember feeling just a little better. It made me smile for just a couple seconds, but coming from a day of tears, it was a nice change. Later in my senior year, I unfortunately experienced a heartbreak. My girlfriend had decided to cheat on me with her ex and not tell me. I found out the day after because she had told someone who told someone who told someone else and eventually got back to my best friend. Oh my God, we need to do an episode on secrets. He told me after school got out that day, and it was quite the heartbreaking news. What was worse was that my now ex-girlfriend told me that she had no remorse for what she had done. What? And she was extremely rude about it. Luckily, it was a Friday, so my 2 best friends took me out to the movies and half-off apps. Listen, half-off apps is always delicious. I was with them for most of the night, but when I got home, there was a pretty big hole in my chest. When I went upstairs to my room, I found that my laptop was open with a sticky note from my sister. She said that she was sorry for what happened and she knew something that would help. Oh, sister. When I powered on my computer, I found that she had my favorite episode of The Vampire Diaries loaded for me. Oh my God. Sister rocks. Siblingships, friendships, got it. That night I spent probably more than 4 or 5 hours watching my favorite show and more specifically my favorite character. There have been times through my life so far where I have turned to The Vampire Diaries to put a smile on my face, and every time I do, the show is there to welcome me back. It was the end of my senior year when I fully realized how much I relied on my favorite show and favorite characters to be there for me. Through all this, Damon was the person that was always my number one guy. He has never judged me for bad times and has always celebrated me through the best times. I know that he isn't real and that the character was just the creation of someone's imagination, but to me, he'll always be real. He's my best friend, one of my closest allies, and my favorite murderous vampire of all time. You know what? Thank you, Eli. You know, we have our second fictional character, but I think you can see the progression into the connection to the character and how Damon in The Vampire Diaries has helped you through so many different things. And I think it is amazing that your sister knew that it would help and left you that sticky note and your favorite episode on. And I can relate to this. When my best friend was killed in a car accident, I couldn't sleep and I stayed up all night watching shows that I've seen over and over and over again on Nick at Night. And it was just this idea of being comforted by other people. And I also relate to the what would Damon do? I relate this more to when I'm working out and I pick an athlete and I'll be like, what would so-and-so do? And typically I think of like a soccer player who they have to consistently run and that sort of thing. And I have asthma, so I want to work on my breathing and being able to run. So I'd be like, what would David De Gea do? What would Wayne Rooney do? And I'm thinking they're probably going to go work out. They're not going to sit on the couch and hit next on another episode of The Good Wife. So I think there is this level of motivation, but also that ability to just be surrounded and comforted, even when these are like Eli said, creations in someone else's mind. But those creations are probably based on their experiences. And humans all have experiences. Some of ours might be different, but there are inherent experiences that we all as humans have. We experience loss, we experience love, we experience loss again, we experience love again. And so I think that the writer or the creator was able to tap into something that Eli also could relate to. And I think that's why characters can help us. Next up, I have Kalinda, again, the good wife. And she's going to talk about the sitcom Modern Family. Growing up, I watched Modern Family every Wednesday night with my mom. Her and I both noticed that it was very similar to Haley Dunphy, the eldest daughter in a family with 3 children, just like my family. Our personalities seemed so much alike that I started to develop a parasocial relationship with her. She is portrayed as someone who is rather slow and ditzy. Her lack of intelligence and common sense is something that her family always jokes with her about. I relate to that because I'll do one thing that lacks common sense, like microwaving mac and cheese without water or leaving my car running with the key in the ignition and getting out and completely forgetting to turn it off. And I do not hear the end of it from my family. I think we all have those moments, Kalinda. Not proud of the next reason why I have a parasocial relationship with Haley, but it is because we were both so carefree and irresponsible. In high school, I did not care about my academics. I don't even think I studied for one test. The only time I did homework was the hour before it was due. I signed up for easy classes. When I was a senior, my little brother was a freshman, so we took electives together, and I made him be my partner for everything and had him do all the work. Siblingships. Oh, that's great. But I have been progressing each day, just as she does in the show, to become a more responsible person. Even though I do try in all my classes now, I'm not exactly the brightest person ever, so I still struggle. Hang in there, girl. We all struggle. And here we go. Kalinda, I relate with you on this next point. Especially in math, I'm not a problem solver. Although she was never into academics, she was into her social life, which is something I tend to be, quote, over the top, end quote, about. I'm on social media quite frequently and always out with my friends on the weekend. I think the connection that I have with Haley is important because Modern Family is a show that brings me enjoyment. Every time that she's on screen, I feel there's a connection between the two of us because of how our personalities collide. It almost seems as if I know her in real life. From our levels of academics being around the same to us maturing as we've gotten older feels like something that I would have experienced with her by my side, even though it was just through the screen. When the show came out, I was in middle school and she played a sophomore in high school. Since she was older, she was also someone I looked up to. We always watched Modern Family together as a family, and I always had my mom telling me that I act a lot like her, so I started liking her right away. To this day, she is still a style icon for me and someone that I admire. I took the BuzzFeed quiz on which Modern Family character I would be, and I'm still her. Dude, that's weird because usually it's like, what Harry Potter house, what type of donut, your favorite color, and your favorite holiday, and pick one of these dogs is the way that they figure those quizzes out. So that is amazing that Kalinda would get Haley. But by the way, I love those quizzes. If you're on the Facebook group page, I'm going to throw that one up there. You can see which Modern Family character you are. Maybe you're Haley, just like Kalinda is. Okay, back to Kalinda. So Kalinda finishes up by saying, Haley is the only character from any show that I've watched who has the same personality as me, which is why I feel a stronger connection. So I think we can see that trend in these fictional characters that people are talking about. Meredith, Damon, Haley, they help us. They help us relate to issues. They help us relate to ourselves and become really important, especially as we are growing. And for college students, maybe even, developing your identity and how we're going to figure out ways to deal with our relationships, ourselves, and the world around us. So Carrie, this is the last letter from one of my students, and it is also an athlete. Most people think of movie stars or rock stars when they think of parasocial relationships. My experience is a bit different, and it all started back in grade school. I was obsessed with not only playing basketball, but also watching professional basketball. My interests weren't limited to just keeping up with my home team, the Chicago Bulls, although Jimmy Butler. I love it. Carrie's got jokes. And D Rose certainly made the pinup wall of studs in my bedroom. However, no one captured my fascination more than Blake Griffin, currently the powerhouse player on the Detroit Pistons. Sorry. Detroit fan in the house. It's my home state team. Of course, you got to support the Pistons. I've never met him, never been in the same room with him, never heard his voice live. No matter, I'm obsessed. I feel like I know him and that he would love me if he only knew me. His command of the game thrills me to the core, and as a testament to that, I've got a huge poster of Blake in my dorm room right now. He's large and in charge, suspended above the basketball with his sprawling legs taking up most of the shot. He's pounding the ball through the hoop, and there's fire in his eyes. In short, he looks like a dude you wouldn't want to mess with, and that's what's always made me feel a special connection to Blake. I feel his adversaries fear him because of his talent and his attitude. I look at Blake as a role model of how to best intimidate your athletic competitors. When I first fell in love with Blake, he was playing for the Los Angeles Clippers. I received a lot of Blake Griffin jerseys for Christmases, and one of my boyfriends even took me to see one of his games when the Clippers were in town playing the Bulls. This was a teeny bit awkward because my boyfriend knew how much I worship Blake, but I think he was cool with it because it can never be a reality. At least that's what he thought. I'll never give up hope. In the meantime, I have to get by with following Blake on Twitter and giving him shout-outs at least once a week. Since quite clearly this parasocial relationship is one-sided, why do I continue? Simple, I don't care. Tweeting out my feelings about Blake and watching him play on TV makes me feel energized and happy. He's so good at basketball and he's so good looking. Granted, there have been times when I felt like the least he could do is respond to my many on-point tweets. Can you take a split second to show a little love? I've been thinking a lot about my parasocial relationship with Blake and how it benefits me. What makes it so good is I really don't know about all of Blake's hang-ups. Who knows what he's really like deep down? Maybe that swagger is rooted in uber egoism or something even worse. Lucky for me, I don't know, and that's why I continue loving him from afar. Another thing I gain from him is my friends' admiration of my devotion. Both my girlfriends and my guy friends think it's cool that I'm so devoted to Blake. After all, he stands for pushing boundaries, upping your game, and dominating your foes. There could be worse role models. I wonder if Blake Griffin appreciates all the parasocial devotees he undoubtedly has. These are the people who are not just fans, they're emotionally, intellectually, and socially connected friends. I truly do feel like I know Blake and he would approve of my parasocial relationship with him. So here's to another Christmas of Blake jerseys. Thank you so much, Carrie. I love it because much like the example of LeBron James, there's a role model, but I also think there's a level of where you can see how social media can blur the lines, but at the same time that she still knows that nothing's going to happen or her boyfriend doesn't believe anything's going to happen. And it reminds me of the episode of Friends where Rachel and Ross are dating and they create a list. Like Ross has, is it like his top 5 if he were to run into the celebrity, it wouldn't count as cheating in that relationship. And then he gets it laminated and that sort of thing. And then he sees one of the people that he used to have on the list, but was no longer on the list. And Rachel gives him a pass to go, yeah, go ahead, go and talk to her. It's Isabella Rossellini. Yeah, give it a try. So Ross goes up and talks to her and he gets rejected and Rachel laughs. But I'm not on the list, right? It was laminated. But you were on the previous list. I think we all we might have that, like, okay, Leonardo DiCaprio or David Beckham, that's my list, right? Or Idris Elba. But it's like, you can just go to a movie and be like, oh, that's nice, or seeing a nice article about something that they've done or a video of how they've helped other people. It's really nice to appreciate them. And in this case, it was nice that Blake Griffin responded to her, but much like when talking about some of the things we have to consider where the lines do get blurred. So there are a couple of things that I find interesting about parasocial relationships that we should consider. One, interestingly enough, there are researchers Eyal and Dailey from 2012 who talked about how creators and producers pay close attention to how viewers attach to characters. These relationships help us commit to a TV show, for example, which is why with The Walking Dead there's the saying, quote, if Daryl dies, we riot. Some fans have written letters to producers to get entire shows back that have been canceled. And just recently, the backlash on social media got Netflix to keep the Friends TV show for another year. So we do have to consider that TV showrunners and other people are going to be concerned about whether or not we're connected with the actors or with the characters because that's how they build loyal fans, listeners, viewers, and they need those numbers every week. So it, in some ways, is connected to the success of a particular musician, a particular blog, podcast, whatever the case might be. So that's something just to have on our mind, right? And I think this goes further when we talk about YouTubers. So Megan Farakha-Manish wrote the 2018 article for The Verge entitled YouTubers Are Not Your Friends. And she talks about how we may be connected to others like vloggers. In that article, it states, quote, charisma star, real name Karis Lincoln, has used the phrase, quote, shining stars to describe her viewers since the beginning of her career as a way to bring them closer. By naming my audience, I feel that I have a very close connection to them, almost like a sister or a BFF, end quote. She's been extraordinarily effective at building that connection. Most of Lincoln's 932,000 followers have never and will never meet her. Yet their dedication to her is undeniable, and it's a perfect representation of the overexpanding social phenomenon of parasocial relationships, wherein individuals attach affections to celebrity figures. The concept is more accurate than ever today, and it's crucial to understanding the complications of life as an influencer or creator in 2018, end quote. I think these thoughts and events are critical. In some ways, the media depends on us having parasocial relationships, and through being more personal, YouTubers create a community that people want to be a part of. And as long as lines of boundaries are not crossed, these relationships are still helpful, as we've discussed before. But even this past week, James Charles, an internet personality, makeup artist, and model, asked his fans on Twitter not to come to his house, that he was not going to come out to take a picture with them, that he needed his own privacy. So if you ask, is it weird, or as people might say, creepy or stalkery to have parasocial relationships? I would say no. Stalking is dangerous and a crime. Have there been fans who have stalked celebrities? Absolutely. Do most people have an affinity for an actress or a character and tune into a TV show every week because of it? Absolutely. But they are not the same thing. James Charles, like all other people, deserves safety and privacy for sure. And I fully stand behind that eager fans give their favorites their space. And perhaps YouTubers and podcasters have the most blurred lines than any other media personalities. People like Beyonce and Leonardo DiCaprio, because of sheer fame and starship, whatever you want to call it, most of them we would never, ever have the chance to meet. Like, how many layers of security and that sort of thing, unless you pay for it or there's a, accidental run-in, there's probably no way that I would ever meet Idris Elba. And yeah, that's sad, but I can still appreciate all of his work that he does by going to support him in the movie theater or watching Luther on Netflix, whatever the case might be. But vloggers and podcasters might seem more like friends than celebrities. For example, podcasting and vlogging is much more personal. The people let the viewers and the listeners into their lives, and more often you can meet them. Heck, I even met YouTuber Tyler Oakley when he visited my campus after he gave a talk, and I paid for VIP tickets to meet some of my favorite podcasters. So that's got me thinking. This is an area that we might need to spend more time looking at, is when you have vlogging, you have YouTube, you have where you can go in and watch people on Twitch, you can do all these different things, you can meet podcasters. Then we have to think about where the line of parasocial relationships is and where the line of interpersonal relationships is. Otherwise, what I would say is this. We appreciate the characters. We appreciate the people who write the characters for us. We appreciate the people who create the TV shows and the movies that we watch, the music that we listen and dance to. We appreciate all the people and all the work they put into podcasting or making blogs or vlogs or gaming or whatever it is they do, because we can relate to them in some way. Now, I can't relate to everyone, and not everyone's going to relate to me, but when we find the person that makes us feel less alone or makes us feel more interested in the things we're doing or more motivated to strive and thrive or to do better, that is a wonderful thing. And our friends and our family and our partners can do that, but it can't hurt every once in a while for me to sit on the couch and be like, would Wayne Rooney eat more chips? Probably not. Wayne Rooney probably doesn't eat chips. So put those babies down. This is for your health, Alysa. Wayne Rooney cares about your health. And here's the thing. I love talking about this topic. I think it's really interesting and fascinating, and it's something that I've experienced my entire life. And once I discovered that there was a name for it and a whole research area, I was really excited. And I teach this in my theory class, and it's one of my favorite days to teach. And I talk about it in other relationships, but much like anything, there is good and there is bad, there is dark and there is light, there is positive and there is negative, and we always just have to maintain that balance. And I think that looking at the letters that my students wrote me, that there are a lot of good reasons to have parasocial relationships. It can do a lot of good for us. And if we're moving in the lines, then we're moving somewhere beyond what might be good for us on a day-to-day basis, and good for our functioning lives, and good for our primary relationships. So I would love to hear about your parasocial relationships and how those have helped or motivate you at some point in your life. And even if you've had the experience of moving from parasocial to interpersonal relationships, what that has been like. Because I know it happens, it can happen, and those can be really great interpersonal relationships. They're very similar, but there's also a huge line between the two. So I'd love to hear more about it, and you can always email me your stories and your experience to bestforeverspod@gmail.com, and I'll share them in a future episode. I wanted to end with one other personal story. So one of my favorite artists is Lady Gaga. I am a huge fan of pop music. I love 80s music. I love 90s R&B and hip hop. And I love musicals. I'll listen to anything, but that's generally if you go to my Spotify. And you can follow me. I have a public account. You can see my playlists, which are mainly I make for my classes. But Lady Gaga is who I listen to the most. In fact, I probably listen to her every single day. In fact, when I was in my office this semester, I had a student who had come in frequently to see me regarding class and about life and so on and so forth. And the last time he came to see me at the end of the semester, he goes, "Do you know that every time I come in here, you're listening to Lady Gaga?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I told y'all in class, I told y'all on Twitter that if you're going to come to office hours, listen for Lady Gaga. Follow Lady Gaga. She will guide you to my office. And why do I do that? Well, here's the thing. Lady Gaga speaks to me. Her music speaks to me. I enjoy the music. I enjoy what she has to say, and I enjoy the kind of person she appears to be and the things that she does that supports that she is a good person. And so I just love it. I love all of it. I love her new music. I love her old music. I love everything in between. I'm often singing and dancing to it. So if you don't like Lady Gaga around me, that's fine. But just know that if you're around me, there's going to be Lady Gaga at some point. And here's the thing. I saw her in concert and it was amazing. And that is as close to her as I'll ever be. I've tweeted at her just thanking her. I think I said for Thanksgiving, happy Thanks Gaga, because on the way to Thanksgiving, I was listening to Gaga. Get it? I thought it was clever. And I think I tweeted at her when Spotify came out and said that she was the #1 artist that I listened to, and I shared it to thank her for the music and for all the moments that she's provided me. But I know that it's extremely rare that she would respond to a tweet. I know I'll never be as close to her as I was at that concert, and I'm okay with that because I don't expect her to be any closer to me to respond to me. But I feel like through these things that I've done is just to show appreciation for how much she has done for me. And so that's what I think about parasocial relationships. It's the appreciation for what her music has done for me, what this TV show has done for me, what this podcast has done for me. And other than that, it's, okay, this is what good it's brought me. I connect with these people on some level, and I want to thank them. And you start to wonder what happens when we cross the line between parasocial and interpersonal relationships. That is possible. I know people who have met online and they become friends with the people that they had parasocial relationships with. But that, much like Lady Gaga, is very rare. Maybe more common than Lady Gaga, but still rare. And that is when you have to work out if that's an interpersonal relationship that can work. But one of the things that's really important to remember about parasocial relationships is although that they are similar to our social relationships, although they provide companionship and can motivate us to get off the couch, or they can help us thrive, and they can help us through some of the deepest, darkest moments. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've seen talk about Georgia Hardstark and Karen Kilgariff from My Favorite Murder and all that they've done for people's depression, anxiety, feelings about so many different things. And I think, wow, that is amazing. And how grateful all of us fans are that they have provided that space for us, that we've been able to create friendships. And all of that is amazing. And so when I did get the chance to meet them, I thank them. And we can have all these wonderful moments of appreciation, but we have to remember that these relationships are one-sided. And that's why they are parasocial relationships. If it was two-sided, it would be interpersonal. And that is where you can create relationships. And I've made lots of friends with people that I listen to podcasts on. We have a great community. But there are also people that I know that I'm going to have very limited communication with. And so that's what we have to remember. We have to think of James Charles. We have to think of privacy and boundaries. We have to think that these are people who have shared their lives with us in some way, but that doesn't mean they share their entire lives with us or that our entire lives are shared with them. And that is the difference. Parasocial relationships bring us lots of joy and motivation and assistance, as do social relationships. And they can help us get by in bad days or bad moments or even bad weeks, months, and years. But that it is still a secondary relationship. Doesn't mean we should have them exit our life. We don't need to cancel Netflix. We don't need to stop watching. We can choose to if we don't want to, we can stop. But we don't have to, because those relationships are okay. We do need to consider that, sorry, Alysa, but Idris Elba and Leonardo DiCaprio and Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and all your favorites, they're not your friends. And that's okay. And that's where you put in your work with the relationships that are primary to you. What are your most salient relationships? With me, it's my friends, it's my parents, it's my brothers, it's peers, it's colleagues, it's other podcasters. And those are the ones that I want to focus on, and then have my favorite characters, favorite podcasters, favorite singers, the Lady Gagas, all that, to sort of sprinkle in on top. It's like a cake, folks. You build that recipe with so many important people in your life, and then you put all this delicious frosting on top. And you know what parasocial relationships are? Just the glitter sprinkles on top. That's all it is. Everything else are your primary relationships, and don't forget them. So until next time, friends, whether considering your best friend, Blake Griffin, or Meredith Grey, without our friends or our parasocial friendships, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Hi, I'm Heather.
And I'm Rhonda.
And we're two wine-loving, psych-nerd, long-distance friends who host the podcast Wine Mind, where each episode we break down a psychology topic while getting buzzed on a bottle of wine. And sometimes we make up words.
Have you ever poured back a few glasses of wine and found yourself wondering, why is wine so awesome? Why is it so hard to make friends in adulthood? What's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
If so, then Wine Mind is the podcast for you. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
And check out our website at winemindpodcast.com. You can also find us on the social medias as @WineMindPodcast. So uncork a bottle and join us.
Cheers!